Bismillah. I'm reading today Islam Between the West and the East by Ali Izetbegovic, who was the former president of Bosnia. There's a lot of information about him, which we'll probably get to in another video. Today I read about the theme, and in this short intro section, just a couple pages, he talks about how there are three views of the world. There's the religious view, the materialistic view, and then the Islamic view. And he kind of contrasts how there is, if you could divide all the ways and outlooks of looking at the world, you can bring it down to either the religious view or the materialistic view. And then the Islamic view is kind of not per se the average of those two views, but kind of like a higher level of those views, which combines them both and takes both perspectives into proper account. Right? So he says all variety of ideologies, philosophies, and teachings from the oldest time up to now can be reduced to one of these three basic worldviews, meaning the religious, the materialistic, or the Islamic. And then he goes a little bit into how there's two sides, there's dualism that's going on between the materialistic and the religious or the spiritual. He says the dualism is the closest human feeling, but is not necessarily the highest human philosophy. Here's how naturally humans have a tendency to categorize the world into these two viewpoints, either the materialistic or the religious. But he says a higher level of philosophy is actually monistic, right? Monistic, which is seeing it in one light. And then he talks about how life is actually, the way we live life in practice and in reality, it's actually monistic, right? It needs to combine these two. So he says the question is not if we live two lives, but only if we live so with understanding. And this lies the ultimate meaning of Islam. And he talks about how there's no then he just keeps drawing this view of there being these two sides, right? There's the scientific versus the religious. There's two lines of ancestry of this, right? He says one line is Plato, Christian thinkers, followed by Ghazali, Descartes, Malenbrock, Leibniz, Berkeley, Fichte, Cudworth, Kant, Hegel, Mach, and Bergson. And then the other line is Thales and Anaximander, Heraclides, Lucretius, Hobbes, Gesine, Helvetius, Holbach, Diderot, Spencer, and Marx. And then once again, historical materialism versus Christian personalism. So he keeps kind of drawing these two viewpoints, and then he says that how whatever way of life is derived from one of these viewpoints is inherently going to contradict itself because it's unsustainable. So he says Marxism rejected the family and the state, but in practice it kept these institutions. Every pure religion disapproved of man's worrying about this world, but as the ideology of living people, it accepted the struggle for social justice and a better world. So Marxism is this material on the materialistic side, right? It rejects family, it rejects state, but then in practice it actually has to keep these institutions to further its cause. In the same way, religion, meaning purely religion, you shouldn't be concerned about the world, but it always accepts the struggle for social justice and a better world. It is obvious in real life that man can't live according to a consistent philosophy. And then he talks about how the modern utopians in China, Korea, so he says all these Eastern Marxist countries, how they consider the pure form of Marxism, whatever, or the highest form of Marxism that we have available, yet they still have religious tendencies and values, right? And he talks about two of them, especially two of them, which is modesty and respect for elders. He says socialism and freedom are not compatible regardless of repeated convictions. And then he says Islam is this middle path, but he doesn't want to call it this middle path. He says it's not really the average or the mean, but if you want to understand it that way, you can. Rather, it's just this higher level. He gives this analogy to Salah. How Salah, you can kind of see this combination in Salah. And someone would be able to extrapolate from the idea of Salah all the other laws and functions of Islam, right? He says, the inspiration which connected freedom of the mind and the determinism of nature in the life appearance seems to be the same way which connected ablution, wudu, and prayer in a unity called Islamic Salah. A powerful intuition would be able to reconstruct out of Salah the complete Islam, and out of Islam the universal dualism of this world. And later he goes into saying like how a mystic is going to define wudu as a religious ablution with symbolic meaning, but a rationalist, meaning on the other hand, will look upon it as a matter of hygiene only, right? One is just looking at it as a form of cleansing, and another person is looking at it as a form of worship, right? And they're both right, but only partly, rather it's both being combined. Then he talks a little about the Quran, how the Quran also combines both of these things, right? It's like life, where it's disorderly. It's seemingly disorderly to the analytical mind, right? Meaning it's disarranged, but that's how life is, right? It's a combination of both. It just flows. It is known that the Quran leaves an analytical reader the impression of disarrangement, and that it seems to be a compound of diverse elements. Nevertheless, the Quran is life, not literature. Islam is a way of living rather than a way of thinking. The only authentic comment of the Quran can be life, and as we know, it was the life of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Islam in its written form may seem disorderly, but in the life of Muhammad, it proves itself to be a natural union of love and force, sublime in the real, the divine, and the human. In one moment, Islam has coincided with the very essence of life. Islam's middle position can be categorized by the fact that Islam has always been attacked from the two opposite directions. From the side of religion that is too natural, actual, and tuned to the world, right? Because Islam takes into perspective that, we live in this earth, and we need to take into account the natural forces that occur in the world, right? And the natural desires and whatnot. And from the side of science, that it contains religious and mystical elements. And from the other side, meaning the side of science, the side of materialism, it would also come and criticize Islam and says it's too religious, too mystical, too unscientific, right? From the future in man's practical activity, Islam means the call to create a man harmonious in his soul and body, and a society whose laws and socio-political institutions will maintain and not violate this harmony. I think this line was pretty powerful. For the future in man's practical activity, Islam means the call to create a man harmonious in his soul and body, right? Living in harmony with both your soul and body, take care of both, and also the society's laws and its function, its roles, and its structure should also maintain that harmony between a man's soul and a body, right? And then he's going to get into this, and he's going to say how this dualism is getting worse and worse and worse, and Islam should come in and act as this intermediary. Cool, yeah.